You wake up tomorrow with no alarm, no meetings, no deadline waiting in your inbox, just your own body deciding when it's ready. For you, that's a fantasy reserved for vacation. For most of human history, it was simply Tuesday. You spend something like 90,000 hours of your life working. That's roughly a third of every waking hour you'll ever have, handed over to a job. But jobs are a remarkably recent invention. For nearly all of the time humans have existed, there was no employer, no wage, no schedule to report to. So what exactly did people do with all that time? Not survive constantly. That's the part that tends to surprise people. In 1963, anthropologist Richard Lee spent months tracking the daily activities of the Jew/Hwanzi people in Botswana, one of the last groups living something close to the original human lifestyle. What he found upended the assumption that hunter-gatherer life was a grinding, non-stop struggle for food. Adults spent roughly 15 to 20 hours a week actually acquiring food. The rest of the week belonged to them. And this wasn't some fluke of one unusually lucky group in one unusually generous environment. The same rough number shows up again and again wherever anthropologists have looked. Among the Hadza in Tanzania, the Ashe in Paraguay, the Martu in the Australian outback, completely different continents, completely different ecosystems, landing on strikingly similar totals. You, by comparison, likely work more than double that every single week. Here's a fair objection, though. Those are modern people living in the modern world. How do we know ancient humans, tens of thousands of years ago, actually lived this way? The bones answer that question. When researchers compare the skeletons of early farmers to the skeletons of the hunter-gatherers who came before them, the farmers consistently come out worse, shorter, more cavities from grain-heavy diets their bodies weren't built for, arthritis in the spine from repetitive labor. The hunter-gatherers, by contrast, were taller, had healthier teeth, and showed far less physical wear. Their skeletons tell a quiet, consistent story. Less repetitive, grinding labor, not more. But the strangest evidence of all isn't about survival at all. It's about the opposite of survival. In a cave in southern France, explorers found paintings dating back roughly 30,000 years. Horses, lions, rhinoceroses, rendered with shading and a sense of motion that took real skill and real time to produce. Someone crouched in near total darkness by firelight for hours, painting animals nobody needed painted to eat that week. In a cave in South Africa, archaeologists uncovered shell beads roughly 100,000 years old, tiny holes deliberately drilled through them so they could be strung as jewelry. The nearest coastline was miles away. Someone walked there, collected shells, and spent hours with a stone tool just to look good. Why would anyone spend that kind of effort on something with no nutritional or defensive value at all? Because making things, decorating things, creating beauty for no practical reason appears to be something humans have always done the moment survival stopped eating every hour of the day. It isn't a modern luxury layered on top of an ancient grind. It looks like one of the oldest instincts we have. So picture an actual day. Morning starts around the fire, breakfast eaten together, conversation loose and practical, who saw tracks where, which plants are ready. Maybe a small group heads out to hunt or gather, but not every day, only when it's needed. On the days it isn't, people repair tools, sharpen spears, work hides into something soft and usable, not because a supervisor demands it, because being good at something mattered, and mattering to your group was the entire safety net you had. And when hunting did happen, it wasn't the frantic chase you've seen in documentaries. Humans are persistence hunters, one of the only species able to track prey for hours at a steady pace until the animal simply overheats. No stampede, no adrenaline spike, just patience the body was built for. By early afternoon, the productive part of the day was largely finished. And then something happens that modern life has almost no equivalent for. Nothing and everything. People rested, groomed each other, played with children, made small ornaments, told jokes. Anthropologist Polly Wiesner spent years analyzing recorded conversations among the Jew/Huansi and found something telling. During the day, talk stayed practical. Tracks, plants, small disputes. But at night, around the fire, the overwhelming majority of conversation shifted to something else entirely. Stories. Myths about how the world began. Tales of ancestors doing impossible things. Jokes. News from distant camps. Wiesner argued this nightly shift is where a huge portion of human culture, myth, meaning, imagination, was actually built. Not in the grind of the workday. In the fire-lit hours afterward, when stomachs were full and nobody needed anything from anyone. And sleep itself looked different too. Historian Roger E. Kirch's research into pre-industrial Europe found that before artificial light took over the night, people commonly slept in two distinct blocks. A first sleep, a waking period of an hour or two in quiet darkness, then a second sleep. That middle hour wasn't wasted. It was often used for reflection, conversation, or simply lying awake in the dark with your own thoughts. Then, around 10,000 years ago, something shifted permanently. Humans began farming. And farming is a trap disguised as progress. More food lets you feed more people. More people need more food. Within a few generations, there's no going back, because there are simply too many mouths to feed the old way anymore. Farming also demanded far more labor than the lifestyle it replaced. Plowing, weeding, defending crops, storing surplus. The skeletons confirm it plainly. Early farmers worked harder, ate worse, and died younger than the hunter-gatherers before them. But populations kept climbing anyway, and with bigger populations came specialists, then soldiers, administrators, and eventually the thing you now spend a third of your life doing. A job. You sleep in one uninterrupted block and call waking at 3 in the morning a disorder. They slept in two and used the gap for quiet thought. You chase achievement by standards a system invented long after your ancestors were gone. They woke up each morning already enough, with nothing to prove and nobody keeping score. You make something creative if you can find an hour after work. They made things because the hours were simply there, unclaimed by anyone else. We're not a different species. We just live so differently from how humans lived for nearly the entire span of our existence that some mornings, it's worth asking exactly what you traded and what it actually bought you.